Okay, we're calling this meeting to order. It's a committee of the whole. All councils are present except Councilor Watson and Councilor Perazzotti. Is there any calendar communications? Rich?
Oh, no, I can't.
Okay, no calendar communications?
Yeah.
Aaron?
I just wanted to report that, and I think we all got this, an email from a resident of the town who came up here to attend a meeting and wanted to park and recharge his electric car, and the parking spaces on the either side of the charging station were occupied by cars which were parked for a meeting. So I just kind of wanted to remind residents, when you're at the Town Hall Annex here, there is a charging station for electric vehicles, and you need to observe the restricted parking area, and please don't park there if you're here to attend a meeting in the building.
Thank you. Bonnie?
I went to the public hearing on Wednesday for the zoning regs and testified.
Thank you.
Along with Diane and, who else was there? Just you and me? I think so.
Well,
At the zoning thing.
and
Yeah.
we also, last Friday, went to the library.
Oh, right.
Because the library on Cinco de Mayo was going to put together a bunch of artifacts from Groton and sync it for, how many years? 50 years? Was it? Until 5/5/55.
Yeah.
So I hope to be here.
Anybody else? Anybody like to move the minutes?
We've got a correction on the minutes of April 26th. 20170094, the Genis Court project. We had a motion at the end, and I made the motion, and it was seconded by Councilor Grimm to not authorize any continuation of the project and to keep the Genis Court open. Discussions occurred, and Councilor Nault made a motion to take the alternative that the town wanted, and I said, basically, I will pull my motion back, providing the Genis Court remain open. And Councilor Perazzotti said that when the vote came, she said she basically wouldn't vote for that because of the fact that I tagged on the comment of keeping the Genis Court open. So the minutes have a discussion that's followed as whether or not other alternatives include closing the Genis Court. That's not correct. That statement is not correct.
So you're saying where it says Councilor Mazza continued to clarify that Councilor Nault's motion included not closing for Genis Court, discussion followed, and whether or not other alternatives including closing for Genis Court.
That's wrong. That's a wrong statement, because when we voted, when I had asked that the motion that Councilor Grimm put on the floor was that would tag on with the fact that the Genis Court would remain open, and then I removed my motion. And then when we voted, Councilor Perazzotti basically she said that the reason why she voted against this was because she didn't think that it was right that we tagged this on, and that's the way it went.
Okay. I know that from the...
That was the intent, whether or not it was written that way, but that was the intent from my thing. Otherwise, I would not have pulled the motion.
Okay. I know from, it was a pretty confusing evening, and I know, Nikki, you were trying to get it all in.
And I rewatched it.
Yeah. So, I just want to make sure I understand, Rich. You're saying that closing for Genis Court, in your opinion, isn't an option,
That's correct.
right?
That's
And you're
correct.
saying that that's what was voted on in the motion. Is that?
No, the motion was for an alternative solution for the Genis Court.
Yep.
And I said that that was a staff's recommendation. And I included the fact that it shouldn't close, it should remain open. And then we voted.
Okay, any councils have an opinion on whether or not they wanted, they would change their vote to have the wording? I mean, Mark, can we even have that wording in the, in a motion like that? Is it, do you limit it like that, or?
Well, I would suggest, because I know Nikki reviewed this, I think probably more than once. I would suggest one or two counselors take a look at the minutes. You tell us what you did, because it was very confusing.
Okay.
Well, the intent was to keep the tennis court open and go for an alternative solution. That's the way it was.
I made a noise because what I'm about to say, if I have the floor, if I don't have the floor, that's okay.
You have the floor.
Okay. As I recall the rules, I didn't want to take the floor, but thank you. As I recall the rules, this may be a point of order first directed to the mayor, and the mayor may then, I was just going to look at the rules to see what happens then. Is this something that gets referred to the rules committee? Because we might have to interpret it, the meaning of what happened. What was the motion made? What does it mean to pull? I'll be honest, it's always been my opinion, I think based on my review of Roberts, although we've never done it this way, that once somebody makes a motion and then seconds, we've allowed withdrawals by the mover and withdrawals by the seconder. I think formally what's supposed to happen, though, is once there's a motion and a second, the motion belongs to the body actually has to formally vote to allow the withdrawal of the motion, that you would not be able to do it unilaterally. So, how formal do we get to go? So I think I don't know whether this is a rules question for us yet.
Okay, thank you. Bonnie?
I say we table it and we watch it on replay and talk about approving these minutes at another time. And get
Okay.
on with this
That's
very
so-
long
it's about-
So
meeting.
we're gonna all review the TV, and we're gonna take it up at the next cow. We're not gonna take these minutes up right now.
This is the April 26 minutes, right?
Correct.
We've got a lot on the agenda tonight.
Do you want to move the March 30th minutes? And, or do you want to?
Well, there's a motion for approval of both sets of minutes.
There's been no motion.
Oh, there hasn't been a
No.
motion. Oh, okay. I thought there was.
Nope.
All right, then I move approval of the March 30th minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the March 30th minutes. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, that passes 7-0 to 0. Is there any unfinished business? Okay. First new business is 2017-0116, fiscal year ending 2017 contingency transfers for ASME supervisor wages. Hi Cindy.
Hello, how are you?
Long time no see.
Friends, aren't we?
Yes.
As you know, the town charter provides for supplemental appropriations and transfers from contingency during the year. And any transfer or supplemental appropriation over $10,000 also requires RTM approval. When we created finalized the 2017 budget, there was only one labor agreement that had been settled that allowed us to put the wages into the 17 budget. At this time, we have another one. The ASME supervisors has since been settled and the contract's been voted on by the council. And we'd like to transfer the money from contingency to cover those wages for fiscal 17, which they were retro back to July 1. And the total amount of that is $8,182. And that would leave a balance in contingency of $10,714 after this transfer.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any questions? Is it, I don't recall, but is it, I know that every year is different, right? We had $425,000 in contingency and we're down to $10,000,
Yes.
right? And a lot of it was wages, right? Over $250,000 of it was wages?
Probably so. We had the steel workers that had settled late in the year last year. We've had the Thames River water taxi, historical document, telecommunicator wages, town manager recruitment.
Mm-hmm.
There have been several transfers throughout this year.
Okay. And,
also, for the fourth quarter transfers too. That was a
okay.
large number.
Yep, okay. Very good. Bonnie?
I'd like to move that we transfer $8,182 from the general fund contingency account 1074 to the following general fund departments: Public Works 1035, $5,727; Finance $2,455.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilor Nault, a second by Councilor Rapsik. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 7-0. 2017-0117, Connecticut Surface Transportation Block Grant for Thomas Road Multi-Use Path.
I think you should let Fred read this.
We don't have to read
I
it.
don't
We
know.
wouldn't know. Is Gary's not here. Mark, do you want to talk to this, or?
Yeah, I apologize. I thought Gary was going to be here, but that's, I'm sure, probably my misunderstanding.
He was in shock from last night.
Aren't we all? You know, I think everybody's aware the Thomas Road project's been around for a long time. We had a meeting a week and a half, 2 weeks ago with folks from the C.O.W. who have been kind of running interference for us with respect to DOT. And basically, the outcome of that discussion was, while Thomas Road was to receive enhancement funding, commonly referred to as safety group funding, the C.O.W. was recently advised by DOT that, well, they've tapped into that money for maybe some other projects, and the full dollar amount, in all likelihood, will not be there when we're ready to move ahead with the project. And so they're suggesting that we basically convert those dollars or trade in those dollars for dollars from another program, this block grant program, which will be there. So it doesn't change the match at all. It just puts us in a better position that when we're actually ready to stick the shovel in the ground, the construction dollars, which are providing 80% of the funding, will be there in their entirety. Not quite sure how DOT was able to tap into some of our enhancement funds for other projects, but I'm sure they have scores, if not hundreds of projects that they're juggling up there, and certainly do appreciate the fact that DOT is looking out for us and have made available to us some other funding that will probably have a longer shelf life and will be there when we actually are ready to move ahead with the project. So this is simply one, to update the council as to what's going on, and also two, to get authorization from the council to sign the application so that we can put a hold on these dollars.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize the town manager to make application.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to authorize the town manager to make an application. Is there any other discussion on this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? That passes 7-0. Next is 2017-0115, interlocal agreement for regional community enhancement task force. I believe the chief of police. I don't believe I actually know the chief of police is here.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hi.
You should have before you a document that was drafted by our town attorney in conjunction with some other local town attorneys in reference to the Regional Community Enhancement Task Force. For background, in February 2016, several police chiefs got together because of the opioid epidemic and some of the quality of life issues that we were each experiencing in this region. Banded together, leveraged some of our assets to form what became known as the Regional Community Enhancement Task Force. They've done outstanding work since then. The partner agencies have been Town of Groton Police, City of Groton Police, Stonington, Ledyard, Waterford, at certain times New London and Norwich, but really the core group of the ones that I mentioned at the outset. We've also had partnerships with the Department of Parole and Probation, as well as the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. They've done outstanding work. They continue to do outstanding work. This agreement would allow our officers, as well as those from the surrounding towns, to essentially merge together. It would give them certain law enforcement powers that they don't currently have. Connecticut General Statute provides that ability through a compact or through an interlocal agreement under Section 7-339 of the General Statutes. You should also see that there is some correspondence from the Town Attorney's Office indicating that the council must provide, or the council must authorize the town manager to make this. There was some question about public hearing. They've given us opinions that that is not necessary. I recommend that we do enter into this agreement. It's been a considerable force multiplier for our officers and for our department. And again, you've read it in the paper, you've seen it on TV, they've done outstanding work.
Thank you, Chief.
I'd like to make a recommendation that we sign the interlocal agreement.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Discussion on this? Dean and then Rich.
Chief, the agreement states that where is it here? Each undersigned municipality hereby delegates to the chief of police the authority to determine when the provision of police personnel and resources best serves the purpose of this compact and benefits of their respective community.
I'm sorry, which?
It's, I'm sorry, it's page 2, numbered paragraph 1. And you refer to this as a force multiplier. I suppose that my only concern, I'm not saying it's an existing concern, it's a potential concern, is that Groton being the size that it is, Groton having the force that it has, and not that New London is a piker by any means, but we've got, the parties to this will be the city of Groton, the town of Groton, town of Ledgard, city of New London, town of Stonington, and town of Waterford. Do you see, is it possible that this could become the sort of, in effect, kind of a, well, somebody else is short. Somebody else's police department is short, and so we're providing policing, in effect, or police resources, if not actual patrol officers, but resources for another town, so that the effect will be that the better funded town winds up kind of providing resources for the towns that choose not to provide resources for their own departments.
I would submit we've benefited from this more than any other municipality. If you're asking if our officers would supplant adjoining towns for regular activities, no, I don't see that. I do see it as being, in many of the cases that we've already worked, there's a connection between Groton and Ledgard, connection between Groton and Stonington.
Right.
Our criminals don't know any borders anymore. This really just provides them the ability to work in a law enforcement capacity outside of Connecticut General Statute 54-1F, which gives felony powers to officers. This essentially will give them misdemeanor powers as well. So if there is an arrest, if they're working collaboratively, they can go out and take someone into custody under misdemeanor offenses. Right now, we're operating in a way where the host agency takes the lead on it. So if we are working in tandem with the town of Ledgard, their officers will take the lead. Our officers will remain in kind of a support role. This kind of clears up some of the fuzziness of doing that sort of stuff. And in fact, all the chiefs that have discussed this have been pretty supportive of that and have wanted to do this for quite some time.
But this is not a situation where, say, Waterford, I'm not going to slam Waterford, just use Waterford as an example, says, gee, you know, we've had trouble finding whatever, a couple of detective positions, and you guys are fully staffed. You know, we need some work over here. In other words, it's not a cross-border mutual benefit kind of thing. It's more like Waterford's down a couple of detectives, and they sure could use a couple people if we could spare the time. In which case, our detectives are doing Waterford's detective work, essentially.
I don't see that happen. It hasn't happened, but there have been cases that we've worked in other communities to assist them and vice versa.
Okay.
It's not...
Yeah, assisting them in solving a crime, which, and you're right, crime knows no borders, is one thing. But to sort of become the, you know, we look around and now we're the U.S. in NATO kind of thing, because we're the ones with the armed forces and the others are not. Don't get me to start on that one. That's all I want to make sure of, that Groton doesn't become kind of the de facto police department for the rest of the communities, where they figure, well, worst comes to worst, we can always borrow somebody from Groton.
We do that now under a separate, we do that under a mutual aid agreement. You know, when there's an incident that takes place or a significant event, officers come from other communities here to Groton and have for some time for the fireworks and you know, back in the day, sub-launchings and things of that nature, and vice versa. We do under mutual aid agreements.
And
This is separate and distinct from that.
Do you think it's fairly shared? So if we're down, Waterford will come. Again, I'm picking on Waterford, but Ledgard, Stonington will come. Do you see it as mutually beneficial?
I do. I've seen more benefit to the town of Groton than I've seen
Oh, okay.
a downside. And this really was, a brainchild out of several of us that met together, and really, I think it speaks to things that we've discussed elsewhere, regionalization, things that were encouraged through certain reports that were done prior to my coming to this department. I think it's a good thing for us. I think it's something that we're going to see a lot more of in the future.
I mean, I see it as a step in the right direction, just guarding against, sort of filling in other people's holes, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to talk about mutual aid. Does this affect the mutual aid in any way, or it works in conjunction with it?
It works in conjunction. Mutual aid would really be for a set incident. For instance, if we had a critical incident here in town and we needed additional people right now, we can enact that mutual aid. We did it across the street when we had some information about something happening at Fitch High School that fortunately turned out to not be what it was initially believed to be. Officers came from other surrounding communities. We can do that in an emergency situation or for a planned event. This is for investigations. This is for other types of activities like we've been doing already. We've done it in the past. We did it with Stonington as well as Groton City, I think about 10 years ago when there was a narcotics task force. So this isn't really breaking new ground, but it is a bit distinct from mutual aid agreements. That's really for an emergency.
And my other question is there a yearly fee for this?
No.
To belong to this?
No.
And my last question is, I noticed that all the towns were included except for Groton Long Point, and I was just wondering why they were excluded.
They have no deliberate reason. Groton Long Point really hasn't had the personnel to support this. I mean, most of us that have been involved in it, and certainly I've kept the Groton Long Point chief on the email string of what's been going on.
Okay, so it's really the support of the police.
Yeah, and the towns that have been involved have dedicated people to it.
Okay. Yeah,
So, I mean, I don't know that they have the staffing to support a dedicated person to this.
No,
We've utilized
I don't think
detectives.
they could do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was just gonna say, on the way to work the other day in the city, I saw Groton Town Police placing someone on arrest, so that probably was mutual aid, I assume.
I don't know the specific
Right.
example you're citing. It might have been was it a uniformed officer?
Yes.
Oh, it might have been as in conjunction with a case that they were investigating, but the town officers do have
Right.
the authority to make
Right.
arrests inside the city and Groton Long Point for that matter.
Thanks.
Chief, I just have a question. With this task force, and it's, multi-town, who is like the purveyor of it? Is there somebody in charge of it?
We've taken a leadership role in it. Yeah, our detective division has really provided the supervisory staff, and that's because of the experience they have.
Okay.
Lieutenant Parham, our detective division
Yep.
commander, has really been the de facto head of it. This will help firm it up.
Yep.
And it also will delineate some questions that we've had as far as, later on we'll be able to, once this is enacted by all the host communities, look at asset forfeiture sharing and how we go about doing that, should there be proceeds that come from any
And
criminal
so,
investigations.
we're basically taking, it's detectives, right?
Yeah.
So we're taking detectives from all the different town each individual town, and they're all working together, they can cross over to towns and have the power that they have in their town in another town.
That's right.
And there's, let's just say Groton is heading it, let's just say. And there's no issues, there's no, it's going well, right?
Right, and the chiefs we meet regularly, we have been meeting regularly to kind of decide what's important, look at the direction of where we're going. There haven't been any problems. In fact, everybody that's been involved has been pretty supportive of it.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 7-0. 2017-0120, Office of Policy and Management Body Worn Recording Equipment Reimbursement Grant.
The second item I have here is in reference to a grant. Approximately a year ago, the Office of Policy and Management put out a grant application for body-worn cameras. We did some initial preliminary inquiries. There are some strings attached to this grant as far as policy that needs to be followed, which is a policy promulgated by the Police Officer Standards and Training Council. Myself and many other chiefs across the state had a lot of questions, a lot of discussions amongst ourselves and with people from the Office of Policy and Management, as well as some other organizations, regarding that policy and the requirements that this grant had in it. My initial inclination was to not pursue the grant because of some of those strings that are attached. After looking at it a little bit more and coming to the realization that, first of all, I'm not against body cameras, I'm definitely for them, but coming to the realization that this is going to come sooner or later, I thought it would be unwise of me not to at least discuss this with the council and say that there is a grant that we could take advantage of this year, this fiscal year, that would fund 100% of the first year of the grant and the initial cost of equipment. But the caveat is, after that first year, there is going to be a need to fund it ourselves. So I think that you all see what's going on in the press as far as law enforcement. I do believe in transparency. In my estimation, these things are better for our officers than not. We've seen incidents where officers have been videotaped, or cell phone recordings and snippets of that have been used to say, hey, this officer acted inappropriately, but yet when you take the entire incident in context with a much larger sample of that recording, the officer's actions are justified. So, having said that, I did look into this. I discussed this a few weeks ago with other police chiefs from across the state, and felt it would be the right thing to at least have this discussion. I know there are people in town and elected bodies that have made inquiries of me and my staff about cameras and body cameras. What are we doing about it? This is an opportunity for us to get the first year of the funding for fiscal year 2018, but the contracts that I've looked at and the vendors that I've discussed this with so far, there is a cost on the out years based on the cloud storage and refreshing of the equipment after a certain amount of time. The numbers that I have, just ballpark, for a 5-year program of body cameras that would outfit the entire department, from myself to the newest officers, would be in the neighborhood of $200,000 over that 5-year span. The first outlay of that money would be covered by the grant, but every year after that, for years 2, 3, 4, and 5, would be approximately $25,000. That storage, redaction equipment, again, getting back to the policy, the storage question is really the big, it's not the camera itself that's the big expense, it's the storage. I've talked with our IT folks about storing it locally. And by the way, I have had discussions with the other chiefs, Davern and Chief Nixon, about this program and what we were looking at. We've looked at some of these collaboratively as well. I believe that the best thing for us would be a cloud storage solution, because of the maintenance cost with it, because of the fact that there's an audit trail, evidentiary nature of the stuff that we're recording. Some of it has to go to court. The state's attorney's office has to have access to some of it. Those cloud storage solutions that these vendors offer are probably a little bit better than what we could do ourselves, and undoubtedly better than we could do ourselves. So that's why there would be a recurring cost after this.
Questions, Rich?
I make a motion that the Groton Town Police Department is authorized to purchase a body-worn camera and supporting storage devices utilizing the Office of Policy and Management body-worn recording equipment reimbursed grant program.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion, Bonnie?
Chief, are you going to be able to purchase it by June 30th and get the 100%?
That's going to be I've talked to our purchasing agent about it. It will be a bit of a challenge. I think we can do it. Were it not to be accomplished, then I would not follow through with it. I would have to say, no thanks. We have to have everything done by June 30th. I've talked to the vendors. They do have the equipment on hand. They are pushing these out pretty quickly across the nation, so that hasn't really been a problem. The problem would be me ended up getting with our purchasing agent and doing a request for proposal. Okay. Unfortunately, none of these systems right now are on state contract. So we would not be able to buy off a state contract. So I've already talked with her, I've talked with the town manager. After the 1st of July, the grant falls to 50% reimbursement. So that's why I thought there was a little bit of sense of urgency and discussed it with the town manager, and he felt it was best to get this in sooner rather than later.
Dean?
I don't know whether we've ever been sued by somebody who's claiming police misconduct, and it wouldn't just be the police that winds up.
We
getting
get sued?
We, the whole town would get sued, and,
We have lawsuits going on right now, it's
you
not.
do.
it's-
I figured, yeah, that they probably may not make the headlines, but
In fact, Captain Sinatra was at a meeting with the judge today about a lawsuit one of our officers is currently under.
I think to protect ourselves, this is definitely one of these cases where you either do it right or don't do it at all. There's no halfway. What I'd like is I'd like something, whatever it is, I don't want to go crazy with the cost, but it's got to provide a good evidentiary, as you pointed out, a good evidentiary trail. So if we can defend ourselves, we can defend ourselves. We don't have to say, gee, we could have defended ourselves properly, but we went with the grade B kind of a setup. So we don't have all the information we need, or too bad, because those suits are not $25,000. Yeah.
It is an investment, you know, and
Yeah, it's money.
a lot of things that we do in law enforcement are those, you know, low-frequency, high-risk events, and if we have the documentation to support the actions our officers take, you know, in my experience, 99.9% of the time, the officer does the right thing, in having the supporting documentation to provide the court or provide those who would come in and make an allegation against an officer. You know, I think it's beneficial to us. I've got that personal experience from officers coming in or civilians coming in to make complaints. You know, I can remember when we first got vehicle cameras in my previous employment, and I wasn't, quite frankly, a big fan of it until the first person came in to make an accusation of one of the people that was working for me. Immediately pulled them in and watched the videotape and realized that the person was lying, that what they had recalled was not in fact what had happened, and showed them the videotape, and they were apologetic. In the spur of the moment, emotion took over, and you know, it protected the law enforcement officer in that case.
It's insurance. Thank you.
Chief, I recall us talking about this a year or so ago, and you stating about the storage, and that being the biggest concern. And I think that I think there was grant then too. I'm not sure there was 100% the first year, but I think there were grants before that you were like, from the cost side, it's a challenge to do the storage of the stuff. So my only concern is if it's 25 to 40,000 additional a year, you know, it's just added cost that we're, you know, when you ask for a budget, you know, it's hard. It's hard to give up more than just the raises each year for the police. So that's definitely a concern. I don't know if they're conservative or if, you know, are we guaranteed it definitely would not be above 40,000 a year?
I have preliminary estimates from a couple of companies that lay that out, and that's what I'm giving you is a contract that they provided me of what the cost would be. You know, after the contract is up, I can't tell you what the cost would be.
Yeah.
You know, what I've seen, and I think we've all seen, as technology advances, cost of storage goes down. That doesn't necessarily mean it would hold true with this particular endeavor, but it is, you know, it is a cost.
Yeah. Do you know how long you're required to keep?
That's defined in the policy. It's 90 days, and that's where the storage comes in. You have to have enough to keep for 90 days for everything you record. But then after that, stuff that's retained for evidentiary purposes, you need to be able to store that as well.
Yeah. So on a rolling 90 days, right? So every officer who have a camera, it automatically goes to the cloud, or does somebody have to?
At the end of their shift, they come and there's a docking station.
Yeah.
They plug it in there, it uploads, it takes that data and uploads it to the cloud, to the service that we would provide with these devices. And forgive me, they sent me some trial and evaluation ones. I left them, I didn't even.
Are they like GoPros? Or are they smaller than a GoPro?
After this meeting, I can go back to the station and I'll pick one of them up just to show you.
What's your opinion? Because when you came in, you're like, maybe I won't do it, but I decided to do it.
My opinion, as I said from the outset, I don't know if there's questions about retention, there's questions about redaction, there's questions about storage, based on the policy that we would have to follow under this grant. But in speaking with others, I think it's an inevitability. I think there's a policy that, you know, that had a lot of thought and you know, deliberate action to put onto paper and tie it to this grant. I'm not saying I don't have reservations. I'm just saying that I think that this is a direction we're going to go in law enforcement universally, whether it's today or a year from now or 5 years from now, I see it happening. I think the public wants it too, through transparency. You know, we want to know what's going on. But there is some work attached to it, and this adds another element to things that we need to do. FOI requests, being able, I need to have people that'll go through this and watch the videos to say, hey, this person is an uninvolved party. I have to redact them. I have to blur out their faces. You know, there is labor, and you know, the costs are beyond that, but it's.
Dean?
Yeah, as you pointed out, in a lot of ways, this is sort of inevitable, and then some of the costs anyway, are unavoidable. But any idea on life cycle costs? In other words, okay, so we invest, we get the hardware, we get the whole setup. At what point do you come back, or your successor comes back, perhaps, who knows, and says, you know, it's that time of the decade when the technology needs to be upgraded, and we need, I think, conservatively, a couple $100,000 to upgrade to the next generation. You certainly wouldn't want to fall behind, and now we're in the same position that we're in with, of course, radios, which are indispensable, and other items of equipment. Any idea yet, given how new some of this is, any idea yet how long before our chief will come back and say, thank you for the last appropriation, and I need to upgrade this thing, it's going to cost this much?
The products I looked at last year are a little bit different this year. What I'm looking at from the proposals that we've gotten, and you know, at every chief's meeting I go to, there are body camera vendors there. And I've tried to use some of the information that I've gleaned from other chiefs and done myself. And the estimates that I've gotten, or the preliminary proposals I've gotten from some of these vendors, includes a refresh program. Two of the vendors that I've been looking at have a 30-month refresh, so after 30 months you get all new equipment. So that's through the span of a 5-year contract. So you get your initial, you get your camera today, 30 months later that camera and all the equipment that go with it would be refreshed and replaced with new stuff. Then at the end of that contract, if you entered into another contract with them, you would get new equipment.
But the cameras would continue to do what they did before. And I'm thinking about, I think everybody's got some antique technology hanging around. You know, I bought the thing, it does what it always did. There are more, you know, a lot of word processing, for example, on old PCs. People have some old PCs. It doesn't matter. They bought it to do word processing. It still does that. Can't play games on it, but it does word processing. Sure. Are the cameras tied into anything else, for example, anything with the communication system in any way?
So one of the cameras, and that's not a proposal that I'm prepared to go for, which is by a company called Axum. You may be familiar with tasers. Mm-hmm. They're integrated with in-car camera systems. The reason I'm not in favor of going for that, because it's much more expensive. The out costs are a lot higher. Basically what they would do is they'd give you the body camera, they would give every officer a taser, they'd be refreshed every 3 years, but the cost is significantly higher. Right. And one of the models we've gotten right now is to take our existing tasers. There's a battery pack that goes into it that when a taser is deployed, the camera automatically goes on. So there is some technology that integrates. Really, they're getting smaller. And like I said, I'll go back to the station after this. I'll pick up one of them just so you can see what they look like and bring it back.
Because I'm thinking if it's independent, you know, if it's a camera, and we're talking about camera and uploading the data, you can probably go beyond, you know, you don't have to get the next generation. You know, you're not pushed necessarily to go to constantly upgrade to keep up with the Joneses. But I don't know.
Rich?
Yeah, just one question. These vendors are U.S. American vendors?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty sure they are. I'm sure there's a couple that aren't, but not the ones I've been talking to that I can recall.
Is it fair to say that technology could get better? Like, I would imagine it to come down from where it was 2 years ago, and if you wait 2 years, it's...
Good, undoubtedly. I mean, we used to have a BlackBerry,
right.
And I had a flip phone before that, so it's going to change. Body cameras are going to change in there.
Diane?
I'm going to think the difference is, though, now we're going to get the 100% reimbursement. If we wait, we're not going to get the, you said after July 1st, it's going to go to 50%.
After July 1st, it goes to 50%. You know, and one of the provisions of this grant says that every officer, from the newest officer to myself, has to have a body camera available. If we don't go with the grant, and Chief Davern and I had these discussions as well when we first started looking at this about not taking the grant and funding it completely, we could carve out who should get them, patrol force, maybe some of the detectives, maybe we rotate them. there's pluses and minuses with each one. You know, that would be a lower price point, but some of the, there's, you know, you wouldn't get any of the grant for that.
Well, my opinion is you should leave here and go back to your desk and order them right away. That's my opinion.
I mean, yeah, I disagree only because I think that we're getting ourselves into a financial commitment that, I think your point to, you know, if there's, I'm making it up, if there's a dozen officers on at any given time, and you have a dozen cameras instead of 60, and they rotate them out and use them, that I think that they're putting that into the paperwork to make it a big, I mean, they're not doing it they're not doing it to be nice, they're doing it because, well, maybe they're doing it to be nice, but they're doing it because they're entering a municipality into a contract where all of the officers have to have a camera from the chief down, and they have to maintain them, and they have to wear, you know, there's a whole program that goes along with it, whereas you could get away with a significantly lower number, and the officer just picks up and puts on the camera when they're going out at night. So for that reason, I'm going to vote against it, and I don't like the 25 to 40, so, but anyway, so. All right, any more, Greg?
Well, to the mayor's point, have you looked at that other alternative, and what are the cost savings and?
We did. I looked at it several months ago. There is, you know, the advantage with this is that all the upfront costs are paid for by the grant. There's merit to that. I don't disagree. But then we fund everything ourselves. And then you also get into the problem where right now we experience it with some of our in-car cameras. When one goes down, that car is non-mission capable. If we only have a finite amount where, you know, officer goes on patrol and theirs isn't working, there's no other to go around, and then that happens to be the officer that's involved in a physical altercation. You know, what do we, he just didn't have his camera with him because it was broken, or was there, you know, we would need some redundancy, we would need some other devices so that if an officer goes on patrol, it's available to them. Right. But, you know, we issue firearms to each officer. We don't issue a firearm to the shift. There's reasons for that, kind of apples and oranges, but, you know, there is, either way, there's a cost associated with it. Either way, I just felt it was important to discuss this with you. If it was something that I didn't want a year from now someone to say, well, Chief, you had an opportunity to get a 100% reimbursable grant. Why didn't you take advantage of it then? If this body feels that we should explore other things, I can certainly appreciate that.
Well, but did you look at any other alternative, like, you know, if we bought a third of the force cameras, what would that be for us to fund all that?
We did. I have, I think the number that I came up with at the time was about $110,000. It was a shorter contract life. Was not significantly less expensive. I think that was for about 20 cameras. The estimates I've got, like I said, about $200,000 for a 5-year plan. There are shorter contracts as well, which are less money. So that, I mean, there are other alternatives, but again, it's whether we want to take advantage of this grant or not.
Just wanted to, have we like talked to the, I said you talked to Chief Davern. Is there any way to, like, are they interested in doing it too? Can we rope it in under the town and have, you know, and do it for the city too? And
that was our initial plan, you know, and I've talked to Chief Davern several times in the last week. You know, I did so. I said to him, I said, you know, I do think that we're going to forward this. It wasn't done at his exclusion. I did talk with him as well as Deputy Chief Galat. You know, our initial plan was to try and do something that worked for both, to get one system that worked for both. I think right now that there's, I don't want to speak for Chief Davern, but yeah, we have had those conversations, and I think we both had mixed emotions as we went through this process to figure out what would be the best. Again, I come back to the fact that we're kind of at the 11th hour now if we want to take advantage of this grant, and wanted to have this
Yeah.
discussion to get your thoughts on it.
Okay. Diane?
I just think in the interest of public safety, I don't like spending the money. I still pick up pennies when I see them on the ground. I don't want to be the last police department in the country that doesn't have this. I personally think that we should have had it by now. So I'm for it.
And we're not gonna be the last one. There are, to date, there's only about, I think, a dozen police departments that have taken advantage of this grant so far. So I don't mean to,
A dozen
yeah.
in the state?
And others had cameras before that.
I was
so
just gonna
there's
ask
other-
that.
so.
Bonnie?
I just wanted to move the question.
Okay. Anybody have any other, right?
Yeah, Bruce, I have a question for you. Do you consider that sooner or later we'll have to have body cameras?
I would imagine at some point in the future, yes, I would imagine that we would, but, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know, it's more for the chief, but I think that, it really depends on the size and the nature of the police force, and, but I would imagine that the country is heading that way, but how long it takes could be another, so I just think that to me, the costs are locked in, and like, why wouldn't they make the offer for a lower number of cameras, or say, 30? I mean, they're doing it for a reason.
Yeah, the OPM grant is very specific. Every officer needs to have access to
Yeah.
their own camera.
Yeah, so that's
it's not
really
very
specific
ambiguous.
and seems, so that's all. I just, I respect everyone's opinions. All right, we're going to, go ahead, Diane.
You don't think things are changing? I mean, we just had a murder right down the street at the bar in December, we are a bedroom community per se, but I just think it's pennies on the dollar. $25,000 a year to $40,000 a year is not a lot of money for public safety. That's just my opinion,
Yeah.
okay?
I know that Bonnie wants to move the question.
And I agree with Diane.
But I will say, we've cut the police. The
I
police are getting
understand.
cut, so it's not gonna make it any easier to
I understand.
fund. So, anyway. All right. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? That passes. 6-1.
Actually, before the chief leaves, LJ, you and I had a discussion yesterday, the day before, or yesterday it was, about the limited amount of time, the fact that these things are not on the state low bid, and the possibility of sole sourcing, which would require town council approval. We do have another committee of the whole meeting in 2 weeks. If that's an option, I know you're doing research right now, because this resolution would not formally get approved until your first meeting in June. But sole sourcing, we do have the provision to sole source if the council is comfortable with that, instead of going out to bid, and bidding takes time. And I know you mentioned you are working with the purchasing agent, but I just wanted to raise that possibly we may be back to talk to you in 2 weeks about sole sourcing, maybe with a lot more information, but not a response to a bid.
I don't understand what sole sourcing is.
Sole source means you, instead of formally
Getting 3
bidding,
bids.
instead of, the town wants, I'll just use this as an example, town wants a small SUV, and we're aware that we can get a really good price on something, so instead of going out and bidding
Gotcha.
it and going through a multi-week process, we would come to the council and say, listen, so-and-so is selling this at a great price for whatever reason. We've gotten other estimates from other dealerships in this particular case that are much higher or higher. So it's just a mechanism by which we could go out and sole source. Obviously,
I understand.
you would all need to feel comfortable with the price, but I'm just raising it in case we get into a bind from a timing standpoint.
I just got one question on the sole source. I did probably hundreds of sole sources, but every time I did it, I had to have a sole source justification to put in the file
Yep.
so that somebody could look at it and understand why. So you have to come up with your justifications should it ever be looked at for whatever reason.
And I'm somewhat aware of that. We've been talking with
Sure.
the purchasing agent.
Karen?
Is it possible to authorize them to sole source now? I mean, if you can't, in the interest of time, rather than you having to come back to us in 2 weeks?
We would still at some point need formal action on
Okay.
that at a council meeting. I think knowing that that's a possibility is probably good enough right now. And hopefully we can get I mean, usually you would expect on a piece of equipment like this, it would be on the state low bid list, but as the chief noted, it isn't. Technology has changed. You know, the state of Connecticut and probably all the municipalities in this, they're gonna buy thousands of these units over the next couple of years. It probably will be on the state low bid list at some point in their future. For whatever reason, it just isn't right now.
And I think it's a lot of the things we talked about, the technology advances, and I've discussed it with people at OPM. There is an expectation that there will be a camera system on that list, but it will be after this period, so.
Okay.
Mark, do we have to put the money up front for this? And then get reimbursed? And if we do, where are we getting the money from?
Yeah, I think it would
10,000 left.
be out of cash flow, really. There's not a need for a separate appropriation. That's how we do a lot of our grants or reimbursement.
Okay.
And the good news on this is it will come. We
Pretty quick.
probably issue a purchase order, so there's no check involved or payment. All the units will come. We'll have 30 days to pay it and then get the paperwork into the state.
And I did speak to the representative at OPM, and they do them in bulk, so they wait for a couple of police departments to do it, and they go, apparently it's bond money, they have to go back to the bond commission, and then get the money appropriated. It takes about a quarter, 3-month period to 6-month period to get the money reimbursed.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Oh, did you want to
I
say
have one
something?
more question, and this is, I don't think, Mark, you probably don't have the answer. I'm pretty sure you don't have the answer to this one either. And that is, quite simply, is it possible we can get stiffed by the state? As soon as you mentioned bond commission, I'm thinking, uh-oh. Given the climate, we're gonna go ahead with this thing, and then when the state's all done with its budget.
Do I have to answer that?
No, you don't have to answer that one. No, I mean, unless you know the answer. But that's
I think it's unlikely. And what OPM, the representative that I spoke to there, says we want police departments to have these. That's why they put this grant together. We want police departments.
Okay.
I think that's unlikely. I know that the departments that have applied for it so far have gotten it. And in fact, when I spoke to her a couple of weeks ago, she said that she had several applications that they were bringing forward in the next, whatever time period it was, so.
Okay. All right, thanks.
All right. Bonnie, do you-
I just was wondering if we can we take a recess for a minute and talk about that meeting? Before the time gets, no?
Yeah. But, so, I think that's it, Chief. You're
All
all
right.
set.
Do you want me to bring one of them back, or?
That's up to the council.
Did we meet on, vote on the motion?
No.
No,
We voted.
Don't make a
Yeah,
special
we
trip.
did.
It passed 6-1.
Everybody but Bruce voted for it. Go water them. Bring
Next
it
up
next time you come to see us.
is 2017-0090 Combined Planning and Zoning Commission. Hi. So we had inquired about combining the planning and zoning commissions, and I think our attorney is here to tell us.
How to do it?
Yes.
I apologize for my,
It looks nice.
oh, well, thank you, but I don't think I've ever been here without a tie before.
Didn't recognize you.
You look distinctive.
Thank you very much. I inadvertently had this down for tomorrow night. So I'll come again tomorrow if you want.
Take a picture.
I wrote a memo that went out yesterday that sets out what I think the process ought to be. There were a couple of questions in my mind. First, before I start, it's not my call, obviously, whether to do this at all. But the questions in my mind were, if you do it, do you do it by ordinance or do you do it by resolution? If you do it, do you abolish both existing commissions and create a new one altogether? Or do you designate one of the existing commissions to become the Planning and Zoning Commission? After looking at the charter and really the only statute that I think touches on this issue, my conclusion was that you probably can do it either by ordinance or resolution, but that I do think you need to designate one of the other commissions and not, I don't think you can abolish them both and create a new one. The second conclusion is based on my interpretation of the statute as it reads together with the charter. And if you want, I can go through the history of the revisions of the recent revisions of the charter that lead us to where we are. But, until the most recent revision of the charter in 2007, there were separate sections of the 1987 charter, one that dealt with the Planning Commission, one that dealt with the Zoning Commission. Both of those sections set out the number of members, their terms, the number of alternate members, how vacancies would be filled, and the powers of the commissions. When the charter was revised effective 2009, those two sections were deleted from the charter, the body of the charter, and the two commissions, I think now, are treated as ABCs under Section 5.42 of the charter and Article 8. Article 8 is the main one that deals with the ABCs. The charter, the two key charter sections, 5.4.2 and 8.1, say that the council can abolish and create ABCs, subject to the statutes, other ordinances, and the charter itself. The only statute that I have found that deals with the question of creating a planning and zoning commission does it in the context of there already being planning and zoning commissions, separate commissions. And it says that one or the other must be designated. Or actually it uses the word may, but the way I read that statute, the word may applies to whether you do it by ordinance or by resolution, not to whether you abolish the two and create a new one. So that was my conclusion in the memorandum. Even though I concluded that I think you can probably take this action by way of resolution, I recommended, or I gave you factors that I thought weighed in favor of doing it by ordinance rather than resolution. And even I had 3 or 4 factors. They really come down to this. Doing it by ordinance, I think, eliminates any question as to the propriety of the mechanism. Doing it by ordinance, I think, is more consistent with the powers and the dignity of the commission that is going to be created and of the commissions that are going to be eliminated. A planning and zoning commission within its jurisdiction has powers as great as this council with regard to setting rules that have the impact of law, dealing with the use of private property. I think that an ordinance with a public hearing, a mandatory public hearing, would be the best way for the council, the preferable way for the council to decide whether to do this, and if it does do it, actually make the change. The other thing is, because of the way the charter was amended in 2009, there's now an ABC guidebook. And there's nothing wrong with the ABC guidebook, and there's nothing wrong with the revisions that were made in 2009. But if one were to, if somebody from California were to look for the sources of authority in the town governing body and governing documents for the current planning and zoning commissions, you'd have a slog. And you wouldn't be looking at places where you would ordinarily look. You'd ordinarily look to the Code of Ordinances. but there you won't find anything. And all you have right now is the ABC guidebook that refers you back to sections 5.3 and 5.8 of the old charter. I think there would be value in having an ordinance so that in the future, if one were to look for the powers and the rules regarding the membership and the terms of the members and the replacement of members and the creation of alternates, that would all be in one place in the Code of Ordinances, readily found by anyone looking for it. So I think that summarizes the memorandum.
Okay.
And again, in the memo, I did give you a draft resolution and a draft ordinance that were essentially identical, by which you would designate the Planning Commission as the new Planning and Zoning Commission. I have no, by doing that, I did not mean to indicate any preference as to which commission should be designated. I have done. I also, in the draft ordinance and resolution, made a provision for increasing the number of regular members on the new commission from 5 to whatever number you want to fill in, up to 10, I believe it is. I don't think you'd ever want to go to 10, and I'm not suggesting that you increase the numbers, but you have that ability if you wish to. Otherwise, in my opinion, if you designate, say, the Planning Commission, the current members of the Planning Commission will continue as Planning and Zoning Commissioners in their current terms until they expire.
Questions? I got a question. I know, I don't want to speak for you, John, but I know that you support this, correct?
This is something that was recommended, both the regulatory audit, the market analysis, and looking at and combining our boards and commissions. I mean, we often have applications that are coming forward that are doing this almost an identical presentation between our planning commission and zoning commission.
Okay.
Some of that.
And I'm wondering, in going through with this, do you talk to the people in planning and say, now you're planning and zoning, do you still want to stay on? Do you still want that responsibility? And then we determine how many we want on and make decisions based on that. Do you give the people on the zoning the first shot at interviewing, or is it a free-for-all? I don't mean free-for-all, but I mean, is it, any, you know what I mean? Like, it sounds to me like we probably should have all of our ducks lined up so that we know exactly how it's going to go, and we can answer all the questions, especially prior to a public hearing, so that we can, give everybody a playbook to moving forward.
I do think that there's some unpredictability with this that's going to happen no matter what. I think both the zoning commission has been, either in attendance at some meetings or watching and aware of the meetings. I believe this was discussed at one planning commission meeting, or at least with some of the members informally. So folks are aware of it. We can certainly poll to see who's interested in serving in that new role, but I really do think that's kind of the job of the council. You're the ones that appoint folks. So right now there's one vacancy on the planning commission, one alternate member. I don't know if if the council did appoint the planning commission as a combined planning and zoning commission, if we would have members that would step down.
Okay.
Their workload certainly, I think, will increase. Whichever commission is designated as the combined planning and zoning commission will have not double the workload, but a larger workload.
Right.
So if we designate planning, will you come to us and give us an idea on how many more people you will need on planning?
We don't necessarily need any more people.
Even though the workload is going to be
Well, the
bigger?
workload would be in terms of attending meetings. It wouldn't be spread out over, it's not a matter of needing more hands to do the work. It's just that the members of the commission are probably, of whichever commission is designated, are probably going to have to meet more often. And each of their meeting agendas will probably have more business. On the other hand, Right now in Groton, if somebody wants to apply to use a piece of property in a way that's not allowed by the zoning regs, but would only be allowed by the commission, arguably by way of a special permit, they would have to apply for the zone change at the zoning commission, apply for the special permit at the zoning commission, and then go to the planning commission to have a site plan approved. So right now, you've got at least a two-step process with a special permit.
Under the current regulations.
Under the current regulations
Right.
with the two
Right.
commissions. On the other hand, well, we talked about this the last time in terms of why, what the rationale was for having separate commissions when they were created and so on.
Well, that's why we brought this up, to streamline and make it more efficient.
Bonnie and then Dean.
And that's not to mention if it's in the historic district, then they have to go to the historic district before they go to those two things.
Or if they need a variance, or
Yeah.
if they need
Or
wetlands.
limit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's a number of.
So,
Dean?
Yeah, the question that I have is, with regard to staffing, if you're an existing member and now you're being told, hey, in addition to being zoning, you're going to be planning too, or vice versa, you may have a personal opinion as to what that means for your schedule. If you're used to meeting once or twice a month, now you have to meet 3 times, whatever. They set their own meetings, but their work, they'll have more work to do, there's no question. But we're a town of roughly 40,000 people. I always like to point that out to say that we're blessed in the sense that we have a potential talent pool. So if people don't want to be in that position anymore because they didn't sign up for a P&Z, I like to think that we have people we can draw from. If we were a town of 4,000 people, then it's harder to find people to wear all the different hats. But I like to think we've got a population deep enough to populate our boards and commissions if and when we need to do that. My question has to do with staff, and that is, right now, it's essentially the same staff, as I understand, that backs up the planning commission and backs up the zoning commission. It's slightly different tasks, of course. Would a combined P&Z increase or decrease your work? Would it make your work easier? What would it do for you folks back there?
Today, I don't think it would really make much of a difference, because we're redoing the zoning regulations. So right now, we're having 3 meetings a month, 2 of the planning commission generally, 1, occasionally 2 of the zoning commission. We would probably still be having 3 meetings a month, so same number of minutes.
4 until they got up to speed. I would
Yes.
imagine. Yeah.
So for a little while, there might actually be the maximum number of meetings. But staff, I mean, right now, what time is it? There might be a planning commission going on right now. 2 staff members of planners are there, 1 administrative assistant. Sometimes there could be 3 staff, planners at a planning commission meeting or at a zoning commission meeting. So I don't think we're going to see much of a change in workload. Where we'll see the change in workload is maybe we don't have to do an additional staff report for another body if someone has to go through a special permit and a site plan. And then as we redo the regulations and maybe lessen the number of special permits, that is where I see maybe less going before a board or commission, but then just a little bit more administrative work on the staff. So I don't see the staff load really changing, or the amount of time spent with staff on this changing. If anything, initially a little bit more,
Right.
educating the planning commission on what the duties of the zoning commission are.
And how about from the point of view of applicants? Do you think that their life, again, assuming that the dust settles, that their life would actually be easier? And I know a lot of the delays are frankly applicant-induced. They sort of delay themselves by not coming forward with complete paperwork. But leaving that aside, will their experience be, will their experience be better, for lack of a better term, right now? Will they see, will they have an easier time of getting approval if they're entitled to approval?
I think so. For example, we just had an approval that had to go before the zoning commission for a special permit and to the planning commission for a site plan. Same presentation, showing the same types of plans. So that person had to bring experts to both, actually their expert couldn't make it to the zoning commission meeting, something came up, but they had to then bring them to the planning commission meeting in the future. And pay them, and possibly an attorney or anyone else. So the applicants theoretically will be saving a little bit of money because their time and their experts' time would only need to go before one body.
Although they may spend more time at that one body because they are doing 2 applications.
Right. How about surrounding towns, if I might? Are we the only ones that are P and a Z, or are the others P and Z, or M-A-D?
There are not many.
I don't know in this area. My sense is that there aren't many, if any, other towns that have separate commissions in this area. I have a vague recollection of having read a statistic somewhere, maybe in Judge Fuller's book, that it's not an insubstantial proportion of towns throughout the state that have separate commissions, but probably less than 50-50, I would suspect.
Thanks.
I'd like to move the question and
Okay, I believe that when you say that, we need to vote on it. I'm not familiar, so I look to, so every time you bring that up, I think we need to, is that true, Nikki? Can you help me with this? Do we?
2/3.
So, all those in favor of moving the question, raise your hand.
Do we have a question, point of order? Do we have a question?
Well, we don't. What question? Yeah, I think that's an excellent point.
I mean, I could be wrong. I don't
What question
remember
would you like to move, Bonnie?
I would like to move the question if we're going to proceed with combining planning and zoning.
Okay. I don't think that does, I mean, I think this is an informational, there's nothing in our template about moving on something, so.
Mike has laid out in his memo
Yeah.
a number of different alternatives. You know, do you want to do it by ordinance? Do you want to do it by resolution? It's clear Mike is recommending by
Ordinance, right.
And so you have the memo that I handed out earlier this evening, but the resolutions that Mike makes reference to in his memo are in your packet. So there's two. One is a resolution for an ordinance, and the other is is a resolution.
Well,
Bonnie?
I would like to move that we vote on combining the planning and zoning commission and having it done by ordinance.
Okay, are you making that motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
Can you just say it again so that?
I would like to move to combine the planning and zoning commission and have the public hearing and do it by ordinance.
I'm sorry, I think you would need to say you're going to designate one or the other, not combine them, not to be overly technical.
Okay, and make the planning commission the main body.
Before we move forward, can we just figure this out? What else, like, do we need to designate how many people, or that can come later? I mean, what do we need to put into this motion that, before we have to?
Well, I think, I would assume at your next full council meeting, you'll schedule the ordinance for a hearing. Or can that be done?
That would be the motion that.
That can't be done at a cow, right?
Right.
So we can give you an ordinance for your next council meeting that you would then schedule for a public hearing. I could put the number, any number you want. I could put 7, I could put 9. And then you could pick whatever number you want as a result of the public hearing.
Are there alternates on planning?
Yes, there are 3.
So, I mean,
although I think they only have 2 filled.
is that
They have
something
3
that
slots.
we should be discussing how many now, or did we take, like?
The ordinance and the resolution I wrote would maintain the 5 regular and the 3 alternate slots and leave you the option of creating X number of additional regular members. I don't think you would need additional alternates if you increase the number from 5 to, say, 7. But I left a blank in the ordinance and the resolution for the number if you want to be able to appoint 2 new members. So you have a 7-member commission.
Dean?
I move to amend the motion. To specifically designate the planning commission, the existing planning commission, as the planning and zoning commission.
Second.
So we have an amendment to the motion. We have a second. All those in favor of amending the motion to include, go ahead, Mark.
I'm sorry.
I find it comical, so it's just, you know.
So the intent of the commission is to simply end up with a 5-member planning and zoning commission. Is that?
I don't think that's been decided.
Well, I'm only amending the motion, offering to amend the motion to that extent. If anyone wants to offer any other amendments, they're welcome to, but right now there's one amendment.
I'd much prefer have a full discussion about it and then have one motion instead of moving it piecemeal. personally.
But the discussion should come after the motion.
Fair enough, but we gotta get the motion in order, you know, just.
Well, the motion,
Yeah.
I've tweaked it once, you're welcome to tweak it again.
Well, you know, I look to Bonnie, you know, you want to move this, so I don't know, how do you, you know?
Can I,
Yeah, go ahead.
how many are on the planning?
5.
Five, with
Are you
3
com-
alternates.
Are you comfortable with 5 and 3? Would you prefer 7 and 3?
It should be 7.
I agree, I think it should be 7.
Should be 7 when you combine.
Okay.
Yeah, you could, I suppose, tonight move to put forward an ordinance that has, say, 9, and then you could reduce it. I'd be a little wary if you put 7 in the ordinance and then for whatever reason decided to go to 9 later. That might not be within the scope of the notice, but we could put 9, we could put 7, and then that doesn't bind you to do anything in terms of increasing the number from 5. But I think if you want to consider increasing the number from 5, we should put a top-end number in there now.
Karen?
I think one of the issues, now we have the planning commission, but you have, as I understand it, 1 vacancy of regular members and 2 alternates, or?
We have 1 alternate position open.
Open, okay. Right, you obviously want to give everyone who's currently serving on the planning commission the opportunity to continue serving. You don't want to kick anyone off of there. You wouldn't necessarily have to worry about the open alternate slot, but I think they would have to be polled to see if all of them are willing to serve a combined, you know, planning and zoning commission. Some of them may feel, okay, this is going to be more than I want to take on, and they'll want to step down. So at that point then, you know, we could possibly poll the people that are currently on the zoning commission and see who's interested in and interview for those people to possibly come over and serve as well. But I think definitely you need 7. I think 5 is way too small. Especially I'd be concerned about getting quorums and stuff like that. So, and I'd be willing, I think the smart thing to do is go with 9.
Sean?
If I may, I think 9 is way too big of a number.
Yeah, I think so too,
Okay.
because it's not just 9, it's the 3 alternates who may
Right.
also attend. I mean, frankly, there's not enough room at the table in CO2.
And, you know, I think although we want to think about the current planning and zoning commission members, they've put great service into the town, eventually all of their positions are going to come up, and some of them may stay, some of them may not. I'm even frankly worried about having 7 regular members, and that's 10 people sitting, asking questions, discussing land use matters for each application. We generally don't have problems with getting a quorum for the planning commission. The zoning board of appeals, we've had problems with quorums with that, or not enough members. That's a board we've had trouble filling. So we don't have a lot of people wanting to be on our land use commissions. So I would just.
Do we need alternates?
Yeah, I think we should have
alternates.
alternates. So right now, we have 5 regular members of the planning commission, 3 alternates, 1 position open. I do think that is a good number. I don't think that number is doing us a disservice. So I'll put that out there.
I'll
You need-
defer to the experts.
You need alternates, not just because regular members might not be able to attend the meeting, but because a regular member might have a conflict on a particular application, and that's really what the
Hadn't thought
alternates are
about
there for.
that.
Gotcha.
If Mike is worried about having a high-end number set there and going beyond that, if you wanted to put in the public notice up to 7 members, you could always reduce that number. But I do think the current makeup of 5 and 3 works well.
I still think 7 should be the number, and we could reduce it should it determine that it's not necessary. But if you take 5, you're just taking the 5 people from the planning commission.
Well, the way that would be set up.
Or all the members have to revet themselves
No,
under the appointments committee. They have to
So-
reapply then.
No, so the way that would be set up is the motion that I think is semi on the floor is that the planning commission would take over as the joint planning and zoning commission. The current members would stay. There's one open alternate position. Now that assumes that all of our current members stay serving in their current roles.
If you increase the number to 7, for example, you would then be able to appoint 2 new regular members. Even if.
From the zoning commission.
Right, and you're gonna have to
Or
appoint
from
an alternate.
somebody in the public.
Well, they don't necessarily have to come from the zoning commission,
Yeah.
they could come from the
But
town.
they have the
Rich.
opportunity to get back.
Correct, yes.
And I think that's.
Rich, hold on a second. Dean, you just.
You didn't raise your hand.
I can't remember what I was gonna ask at this point. I'll think of it as soon as you pass me.
Okay.
All right,
All right.
5 minutes.
I would like to move my motion with 5 members and 3 alternates.
No, wait. There's a point of order. There's a proposed amendment that's been seconded on the floor to amend your motion to combine the two, to make it more specific, to designate planning as the combined planning and zoning. We can vote on that, and we'd still be able to have discussion about the number or not. My recommendation would be that we, when we're done, we amend the motion, once we've amended it the first time. We amend the motion as amended to say, we're thinking of up to. Okay, but ultimately what we're gonna do is we're putting something in motion so that we'll get public comment from the planning commission, comment from other people, privately, I'm sure, or semi-privately by email or phone calls at a public hearing, and then we'll make our final decision as to exactly how many. We may even scrap the entire thing, who knows? But the only way to get the ball rolling is to actually pass something here. That's how I'm seeing it.
I don't understand why we can't, at the next COW meeting, have something more constructive to vote on, that we shouldn't vote on anything tonight, that we should say, have the discussion about what we want, and let the attorney and John and Deb come back with, here it is, and then we can amend it if we need to, and then vote on it and move forward, as opposed to, you know what I'm talking about, Mark? Or you look a little, good question. Is that, I mean,
Well, I think you have, with all due respect, I think
Yeah.
you have that. It's really,
Well, we
kind
got-
of
we
getting
got-
wrapped
right.
around the axle of 5 versus 7 versus 9. I think all Mike was suggesting is, if you start with the higher number, you're covered. You know, if you say 5 and during the public hearing, people may comment that, geez, 5's not enough, you should maybe go with 7, because it hasn't been noticed as 7, potentially 7, there may be an issue about modifying it at that point. So I don't think Mike was recommending 9, he was just saying, that gives you the most amount of flexibility.
yeah.
If you need to think about the concept, the ordinance, it sounds like you're pretty sure you want to go with the ordinance route, at least that's what I'm
That's what it's
sensing.
recommended.
Yeah.
I don't know how many other issues necessarily there are at this point. But you have another cow, and following that cow, 2 weeks later, you'll have the town
Well, no,
council meeting.
I think that if you were good and the council is good with the way that we're, in the direction that we're moving, that's fine. I'm just getting a little bit confused as to keeping adding things on to the, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm fine going in the direction of the ordinance. My only question is, what is the real reason we'd want to increase the number from 5 to 7 to 9? Is it because we're afraid they're gonna have more work, that you need more people, or that you need more of more expertise amongst the board since you're combining both? Or can the 5 do it, which sounds like John thinks that's the case.
I mean, I think Mike put the option there because it's an option, and we wanted to put all the options on the table for you, so you could make the ultimate decision.
Diane?
I think we should listen to the expert, and we'll start at 7, but maybe stay at 5, and I would like to get this ball rolling instead of waiting to the next COW meeting.
Okay.
That's me.
So right now, we have amended the motion to keep planning and lose zoning. And does someone want to amend it again to the number of members?
Well, we have an amendment. You can amend the amendment if you want. It's not. No, I've offered
We
if
should
somebody
vote-
wants to amend my
vote.
amendment, that's fine. You can have an amendment of an amendment on the floor.
Okay. Well, we have voted, have we voted on it?
We haven't voted on
Okay.
anything.
Greg?
I'll amend the amendment to include language that we have a max of 7 members of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Permanent, and then.
And then
And designate the plan.
designate 3 alternates.
Good, yeah, right, okay.
I'm sorry, what was that last part?
Designate 3 alternates.
Designate 3 alternates.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to amend the amendment. Any discussion on this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, that passes 7 to 0 to 0.
Now you're gonna vote on
Yeah,
the
I know, I'm with you.
Okay.
We're gonna vote on Dean's amended motion that's been amended. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, that passes 7 to 0 to 0. We now will vote on the original motion as amended. I got it. Twice, thank you. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, that passes 7 to 0 to 0.
Now, I have a question. Do we have to move to set a public hearing?
I would think you should have the ordinance. We need to fill in a couple blanks in the ordinance and clean it up a little. I can get that done right away. But I think you would have to have that.
If you wanted to tonight to establish a public hearing date, that's fine. Don't know that we could do it in June, the first meeting in June.
And we have to vote on introduction of the ordinance, and then the public hearing, that would have to go to council.
Yeah.
Once that's approved, then you can schedule, then the public hearing would be sometime after that. And at a council meeting, that means it would be in July.
So the introduction, setting the public hearing date, if you wanted to do that, to take the step to start that, you could do that tonight, or you could do it in 2 weeks, because it's not going to impact when the public hearing's going to be.
You have float.
Okay.
Let's wait, I guess, then, if it doesn't matter.
We'll just wait. All right, thank you.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
Does that mean it will be on next week's?
This will be on the committee, the regular meeting,
Right,
but the public hearing date to be set will
right.
not be.
I'm sorry, Matt, what's your?
So next week it'll be on there that we
You
do?
don't have a meeting next week unless you decide to
Oh,
have
okay.
one, because you got rid of the second town council meeting of the month when you adopted your schedule.
Be on May 23rd, committee of the whole.
Right.
Okay,
Okay. All right. Good, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Anyway, 2017-0128, Planning and Economic Development Project Funding Update for fiscal year ending 2017.
Okay. Very briefly, I'd forward a memo to the council, trying to keep you in the loop of what we're doing budget-wise, and also some of the projects that we're talking about doing. When we did our budget presentation before the council, just maybe a month or so ago, there were some questions about, hey, when you're working on and thinking about doing special projects, give us a little bit more detail on this. So this year, in our current year's budget, we had planned on doing a number of projects, but we had deferred those so that we could utilize some of the money from that, as well as money from salary savings, because we've had some people leave the department, and during the times of that, during that hiring process, we've had some salary savings. So we had used some of that money initially to do the tax increment financing project, and we had put some other projects off, the biggest one being the Paquonic Bridge design guidelines. We've had some of our positions, it took us longer to fill them than we originally thought it would. So we had salary savings, and I had actually even said that to the council when we were doing the TIF project, that if all works out as we think it will, we'll probably be coming back to you this year to say, hey, we have the salary savings within this year's budget. We want to do that Paquonic Bridge project. It was something that we'd asked for in this year's budget. So that's one of the projects that we're looking to get direction from the council on, because that would be entirely funded with salary savings. In addition to that, another budgeted project was the wayfinding sign project. again, taking a quick step back, our market analysis recommended marketing, wayfinding, our website, a number of strategies of how we can improve our economy. Our plan of conservation and development, which was adopted this past year, recommended doing the design guidelines and Pequannock Bridge and some studies around our villages and our nodes in town. So all these projects that we're working on are the implementation devices of a lot of other plans and policies and analyses that we've done over the past couple of years. So for the wayfinding signage, we have some money that was still allocated in our projects account, and we'd be utilizing some funding through the salary savings to do that. The scope of that project grew a little bit because some other things came up over the past year. For instance, looking at sign kiosks in Mystic, looking at signage for the Thame River Heritage Park water taxi. When we were first talking about the larger wayfinding signage program, the water taxi was just starting to happen, as well as a number of other things. A third project that we're looking at doing is the economic development website. We've spoken to before about that. Both the wayfinding project and the economic development website, we issued RFQs on both of those. We've gone through the selection process. We have contracts that we're still in the negotiation phases on both of those, and we're ready to execute those before the end of this fiscal year. The economic development website, originally we had $20,000 in the budget. We need an extra $1,500 from salary savings to look at the hosting of the website and some other assistance with it as we're setting it up and maintenance of it. And then the fourth project, we've been working with Ninigrit Partners. They're one of the firms, they're an economic development firm that's working on the joint land use study, and they were gonna help us. So one of the things you've heard us talk about is the amount of commuters that work in Groton, and why aren't those people living here? Where are they living? And what can we do to start getting some of those people to move here, as well as some other strategies to address the growth in employees and the turnover of employees in Electric Boat over the next few years. How can we get more of those people to live in Groton? What strategies can we do to address the housing side of the equation, which isn't something we've spent a lot of time and effort on from an implementation stage. It's something we've been aware of from the market analysis, but we've been looking more at the industry, growing our business brand list, not reinvesting in our existing housing stock. So we're looking to also use some salary savings to do a small project with Ninigrit Partners to get some more data, and then also some strategies that we can get more people to reinvest in some of our existing housing stock, doing some neat things like looking at where houses have sold in town, and then where those houses have sold within a 2, 3, 4 year period of time, how many of those house sales have people pulled building permits over a certain value, to see, are people buying houses and then reinvesting, or are they not? Which neighborhoods are we seeing more investment and reinvestment in, and others that we're not, so we can start coming up with some strategies to get people to reinvest in some of those older neighborhoods that aren't getting enough attention. So that's what we're looking to do. I think these are key projects that'll help all the things we've been talking about for the last couple of years. Not asking you for any more money. It's all money that's within our existing budget, things that we had estimated in our expenditures for the year, so it's not like we're taking any money back. We're just trying to use what was in this year's budget.
Bonnie?
Why do you have this salary savings?
Why do we have the salary savings?
Yeah.
We had 2 building officials turnover within the department. Our code enforcement officer position was open for a number of months. So over that period of time, we weren't paying someone.
Okay.
And the work and a lot of it was piling up. We're still catching up on a lot of the zoning enforcement issues. I'm sorry if some of you still get phone calls on some of those. It's something we've been working to try to catch up on. And we had 1 retirement in the building official's office and 1 other gentleman.
Rich? Yeah, I think it's wonderful that we're doing this with the savings from the employees. I make a motion to approve the use of the OPDS funds in the fiscal year budget as described above.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can you just give me the math? Just instead of in writing, just what you're saving this, and you're using this for this, and this for this.
Sure, so, I think the memo lays it out, so the Quantic Bridge Design Guidelines, right now we have 0 in the special projects line item for that. $25,000 will come out of salary savings. For the wayfinding signage, we have $10,000 in the special projects line item under economic development. We'll be using $19,500 from salary savings. For the economic development website, we have $20,000, again, line item in the economic development budget for the website. We'll be using an additional $5,800 from salary savings. And then for the Niagara Partners project, we're estimating that it's gonna be somewhere around $12,000. I'm waiting for a scope from them, and we might have a little bit more. It could go as high as $15,000, but I don't think it'll be that high.
And that whole amount would come from salary savings as well?
Yes, it would.
And are you spending all the salary savings?
As we projected, yes, well, there'll be a little bit of money that's going back into the general fund, but it wasn't much. So that'll be matching, basically utilizing what our department budget was.
So what would you have done if you didn't have the salary savings?
I'd be asking you to do these projects.
But they were in your budget originally.
Correct. So we did the tax increment financing project, so that's why we didn't do the Quantic Bridge project. That was $25,000. We also took some money in order to do tax increment financing. That wasn't something that we had originally scoped out in last year's presentation of the budget, but as we learned more about it over the course of this year, it was something that was recommended in the market analysis, and we brought it to the council, got your buy-in on it, because we want to move a couple of projects forward that need tax increment financing.
I don't know. I don't think, Mark, and you can help me, have we ever, the departments normally, I don't ever recall this play, like the department coming before the year's out, looking at the savings in the department and spending it all.
Well, I think there's maybe, things come up in every department every year in which there may be money moved around. And so we don't necessarily come back. John, as a department head, could spend to the bottom line of what has been approved by the council and the RTM, as long as he stays within the estimate that was developed February timeframe that's in the budget. You know, as you know, we put estimates together. I think what's different here is when John and Paige and Deb came to the council 2 months ago or so to talk about TIF, it was, the understanding was we were going to be deferring some things in order to do TIF. TIF wasn't something that we budgeted for at all. And so I think, one, in part, we're coming back to you saying, you know, those things we said we were going to push off, we have an opportunity here to move ahead with them. And then two, there has been, and Mayor, you've received some of these from an individual in town questioning how funding has been spent in the planning department for some of the economic development initiatives. So I think there's an overabundance of caution here to make sure that it's clearly documented so that one of our frequent flyers from a FOI standpoint is, if he so chooses, understands that the council's fully informed. And John and I haven't really talked about this, but those are two that come to mind as to why. And I think the third one, and maybe the most important one, it was the council, you know, that really jump-started the community's economic development efforts. So, you know, there's a desire to make sure that all of you are fully aware of all the things that planning and the initiatives that planning and development is either talking about or proposing to engage a consultant on. So those to me are kind of the three big reasons. But you're absolutely correct. If something happened in Public Works and Gary had some salary savings and he was within his estimate and he needed to go out and fix something, he would just do that.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely correct.
Okay.
This is a little bit different.
John?
Yeah, all of these are within our estimate, and I think of, Mark made a lot of great points, and to me, I think the most important one is, one of my most important jobs is to keep you all in the loop and make sure that what we're doing, we have your buy-in on. So we need your help on all these initiatives just as much as you need us to get them done. So I thought it was very important that you know what it is that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And when we say, hey, we don't think we can do something, I don't want you to read about it in the paper that I thought they couldn't do that and they're doing it now. I wanted to make sure that I got your blessing to continue to move these very important initiatives forward.
Yeah, and I think we all appreciate that. One thing with this Ninigret, or maybe they can do it or whatever, I would like to know, and maybe we can talk about this more, but what the impact of education and the perception of education in Groton is on economic development and on people moving into the town. And, I think it's not hidden, there is a cut to the budget. I think some of it is absolutely necessary. But we've discussed it a little bit, and I want to have better understanding of how that's going to affect these people from Electric Boat. I mean, I think we provide a great education in Groton. But if the perception is different than that, how that's going to affect the new people working at Electric Boat and how it affects their decision to move into Groton. And I think it's very, very important, based on the fact that we're doing all of these things to have the people, have the job hires come and live in Groton. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's on your radar or not, but I don't know, maybe Ninigret might be able to address that somewhat.
And that also goes into the diversity of the housing stock. Today, Paige and I were at a session talking about the differences between fiscal impact analysis and economic impact analysis, and different types of housing have different impacts on the local economy. Some of what we want to see, and yes, I think the short answer is it's something Ninigret certainly can look at.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 6-0. What's that?
Thank you.
Hearing voices. Next is 2017-0075, disposition of Williams Sealy School property, potential executive session.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
He's staying.
We're all sticking around for
They're
executive
staying.
session.
Mark?
We do, the intent of this is to kind of update the council as to where we are with discussions with Lisa Whitney, who's also in attendance with Gretchen. I don't know if the council maybe wants to hear from them first and then go into executive session. At some point, I would recommend you go into executive session. Or if you want to go into executive session first, then let staff review what the conversations have been, and then open it up again.
What does staff want to do?
I think if we went into executive session, we could discuss the agreement with the council, the staff level, and then we can move from there.
Okay. We'll make a motion to go into executive session along with Deb, Paige, and John, Mark, for the purpose of discussing a proposal on naming somebody to sell Williams Sealy property.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 6-0. Okay, we're back. 2017-0113, Pfizer Local Community Grant for the Senior Center. This is a staff referral from Mary Jo Riley. The grant application is in the amount of $7,500 to be submitted to Pfizer for approving the technology used for the Senior Learning Network Education Program and the Lincoln Center Live Program.
Oh, yeah,
And I would imagine there's no matching funds.
Correct.
And sounds like a slam dunk. Bonnie?
I would like to approve the application for the grant funds of $7,500 from Pfizer to the Groton Senior Center for that project.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, that passes 7-0. 2017-0088, the ARC Neighborhood Assistance Act Program application. And that, we conducted a public hearing concerning the Neighborhood Assistance Act Program, and the only application we received is from ARC, and a representative from ARC was present and presented their proposal. No other comments were received. Is this to move forward with it, Mark?
That would be my recommendation. We would prepare a formal motion, a resolution for your June regular town council meeting. Applications are due at the end of June, back up to the state.
Okay.
Make a motion to move forward with the ARC Neighborhood Assistance Act Program application.
Second.
We have a motion by Rich, a second by Bonnie. Is there any further discussion? And Mark, this is good, right? I mean, you just said you supported it.
Oh, absolutely. No, I thought she did a great job explaining the project. It's right in the house is right in the community. Sounds like it needs some energy efficiency done.
Okay.
It's perfect use for the dollars if we can attract the dollars.
Okay. Any other discussion?
No.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 7-0. The last item on the agenda, 2017-0044, Town Manager Search Committee Potential Executive Session. I'd like to move that the town councilors, along with Bob Zagami,
Bob Zagami.
huh?
And Bob Zagami.
Zagami?
Bob Zagami.
Bob Zagami.
That's it.
Okay. Go into executive session for the purpose of ironing out the town manager contract.
Second.
Do you want us to stay around, or are you going to be?
I think we're going to be pretty quick.
So do you want us to
Yeah.
stay around? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Good try.
No, I just was
Yeah.
gonna if not, then somebody needs to let me know what we're doing with Oddfellows.
Yeah, we're going to discuss, I think we're going to discuss it under other business.
Okay.
So what we can.
So you want Shane and Nikki to
Yes.
stay around? Okay.
All right, we're back from executive session.
In line with the.
And,
Ready?
yep,
I hereby move to authorize Mayor Bruce Flax to execute a written agreement reflecting the terms discussed in executive session with the selected candidate for the position of town manager, subject to review by the town attorney and modifications within a reasonable scope.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 7-0. And that brings us to other business. I think it is. So there's two things. We have one is we are trying to get a meeting together for Thursday to meet with Oddfellows. And everybody has a lot of different things going on. Deb said she could make it if it was 6. I have a game to bring my son to at 5:30. Diane, you need to go. You have work issues.
Friday?
We prefer to do it
We
on
have to do
Thursday.
it before Friday.
Mark, are you available on Thursday?
I have a TIF public information.
That's 5 to
meeting.
6, right?
5 to
No, I think it's from 6 to 8 or something.
6 to 8. Here?
Yes, yeah.
How about tomorrow?
There's also a meeting in the afternoon. Maybe that's the one you're thinking. There's a kind of for the committee and then the public information.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the committee is 5 to 6, right, Karen? That's what you had said.
I thought it was 5 to 6, but maybe they've changed the time.
They said we can't,
6 to 8?
we
then-
can't do it tomorrow because it's too late.
Not enough time.
Right, too late to post. So, if it's 6 to 8, do you guys want to try 5?
I have a meeting, and just so that you know what my schedule is. kid at the orthodontist, 4:30, I'm saying till 5. I've got I chair the Cable Television Advisory Council meeting that runs from 5:30 to probably about an hour. And then I've got a hole, and then I also chair a meeting at 7:30.
5:15.
What time are you free?
I'm not.
At all?
Well, I mean, I'm free. You can stick me in between 6:30 and 7:30. Normally, the cable meeting wouldn't take long, except we have elections, and I'm gonna have to pull teeth to get a treasurer position out of somebody. So I don't know whether it'll take an hour, a half hour, what people are game for. I slotted it for an hour, so I'm available from 6:30 to 7:30, allowing no travel time. It's within town. That's gonna have to be good enough.
Rich, you're available anytime, right?
Yeah.
Bonnie,
I have a problem, but I'll reschedule it.
and Mark, if we did it at 6:30, you're in the.
I'll get here. Don't worry about me. I'm a short timer, so I'm not gonna be involved in TIF that much longer, so.
We're supposed to be
I'd like
calling
be
you
there.
that.
Yeah.
6:30?
Can you guys move
We
to
don't know about
6:30,
being
and
short
then
time
we'll
or
hopefully you'll get there in time. I know Deb can, but
Extend.
we'll figure out how she feels about it. And all right, why don't we go for 6:30 on Thursday?
Just so you know, it would have to be in the small room.
That's okay. We can all fit in there.
Okay. We'll make it work.
So
Just us and-
what are you looking, so I can?
It'd be the
like,
same. It'd be the same agenda as Monday.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, same as Monday.
so 6:30
Shouldn't we tell
Thursday.
them about the extension?
Yeah.
And you want Mary and Cindy and Eric there? Or?
Yes.
We don't fit.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you hear Rich?
Yeah, and then, Mark, with the town manager position,
Yep.
it's looking, if everything falls into place as we want.
They're not coming until November.
Ho, ho, ho.
They'd be starting July 5th, and we were wondering if you would consider staying on until the 14th of July.
The 14th of July.
Yeah, so you
Some-
could.
some
hold
overlap?
Yeah,
hand
like a
holding,
week and a
yeah.
half.
If you want to take some time to think about it.
See if those cruise tickets have been come in the mail yet?
Take some
For a
time-
week.
Take some time off in June?
I have to take some time off. It's use it or lose it time.
Yeah.
So I can stay to the 11th.
Okay,
Um,
We'll take it.
I've got travel plans.
okay, great. We appreciate that. Thank you.
Will you be available by?
Anybody else have anything?
I have one other thing.
Go ahead, Greg.
Sorry, Dean. Will you be available by text after that?
I'd like to I don't know, re-energize the referral for the 501K discussion to get it back on the docket sooner than later, because last time we talked.
401.
401?
Last time we talked about it, the feedback was it's gonna take months to go figure this out. I just think we
Okay.
could do it a lot faster.
We get in touch with her and see about the, what was Eileen and,
That actuary.
yeah, and see about getting her on the agenda for,
We want to do it.
okay?
Thank you, Greg.
What is this
You're welcome.
referral on?
401, whatever the
Yeah,
municipal
defined
401.
contribution, changing the pension.
Yeah,
Yeah.
defined
Getting rid of
benefits
pensions
to
for
go
newborns.
away.
220, 221.
You got that, Nick?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Anybody else? All right. Someone want to,
Make a motion to adjourn?
great,
I'll second that.
we're adjourned. Thank